Willow Creek was the kind of town where autumn never really ended. Leaves skittered across the pavement year-round, and the wind carried stories whether you wanted to hear them or not. When the Harper family moved into the old house on Maple Lane, the locals didn't say much. David, a true crime writer chasing a second chance, saw the place as a creative retreat. His wife, Clara, hoped the fresh air might calm his restless mind. Their daughter, Sophie, hated it from the moment they stepped inside. The house was a century old, tall, creaking, filled with strange echoes that didn't belong to them. David called it character. Sophie called it cursed. On their second day, David found the attic. It was a low, dust-choked crawl space, accessible only by a reluctant, splintered ladder that dropped down from the ceiling. Among the junk, cracked furniture, forgotten boxes, a broken rocking chair, something caught his eye. An old metal film canister, tucked behind the chair as if someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. The label was barely legible, just 3 words, written in faded ink. Home Movies, 1973. Curious, David brought it downstairs. He'd always had a soft spot for old reels, and this felt like a hidden gem waiting to be unearthed. He set up a projector in the dining room, an antique he'd picked up years ago at a flea market, never used until now. That night, long after Clara and Sophie had gone to bed, he pressed play. The reel flickered to life. At first, it showed simple, happy scenes. A family of 4, mother, father, son, daughter, laughing in the backyard, opening presents, dancing in front of a Christmas tree. The footage was grainy and color-washed, but it had that warmth old films carry, the kind that makes strangers feel familiar. David smiled, imagining the life they must have had in this same house. Then, without warning, the footage changed. The image jumped slightly, and the scene cut to the attic, his attic. Same slanted ceiling, same cracked window. But the family wasn't laughing anymore. They were tied up, wrists and ankles bound, gags stuffed in their mouths. All 4 sat motionless, eyes stretched wide with silent terror. The camera was perfectly still, as if mounted, waiting. Then a shadow stepped into the frame. A tall figure, face covered in a rough burlap sack with crude holes cut where the eyes should be. In one hand, it held a knife, long, glinting in the dusty attic light. It stepped toward them. The screen went black. David stopped the reel with trembling fingers. His breath came fast and shallow. He stared at the blank wall, listening to the silence pressing in from every corner of the house. He told himself it was staged, someone's twisted student film or an elaborate prank, but his gut knew better. He'd just seen his attic, the same floorboards, the same layout, and something in the family's eyes felt too real to fake. He watched it again, and again. Each time, the same ending. Same silent cut to black. The next day, David combed through the town's online records, looking for any clue about the house's past. Buried in a thin slice of newsprint from 1973, he found it. A family, the Carters, last seen at 23 Maple Lane. They had vanished without a trace. No suspects, no remains. The case was still open. He should have stopped there. Should have told Clara and packed up the car. But David was a writer, and curiosity is a slow, suffocating poison when it takes root. He watched the reel again that night, hoping maybe he'd missed something. That's when he saw it. Etched into the attic floor, barely visible in the flickering light, was a symbol. A circle with jagged lines bursting outward like a shattered sun. David paused the reel and copied the symbol into his notebook. It felt familiar. Too familiar. But he couldn't place where he'd seen it before. Over the next week, the symbol invaded his thoughts. He'd find himself drawing it without meaning to, on receipts, envelopes, Sophie's school notes. Clara asked what was wrong, but he brushed it off. Sophie began waking from nightmares, shaking, pale, whispering about a masked man in her room. Then one night, the projector turned on by itself. David rushed downstairs. The dining room was bathed in that same flickering glow. Sophie stood motionless, watching. The film showed the attic, but this time the family was gone. Only ropes remained. The symbol now pulsed faintly on the floor, glowing with a sickly hue. A low hum began to rise, not from the projector, but from somewhere inside the house. "Sophie," he said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. She didn't blink. Her lips parted, and she whispered, "It sees us." David jolted her back to awareness. The projector stopped the moment she gasped. The room fell silent again, but the silence felt different, heavier, aware. The next morning, he burned the reel in the backyard, watched it crackle and warp in the flames, told himself it was finished. But the house felt colder after that. Clara began hearing voices calling her name, always from the attic. Sophie refused to sleep alone. She swore the burlap masked figure stood in her mirror at night. David reached out to a local historian named Margaret Tate, who agreed to meet him at a diner just outside town. When she saw the symbol he sketched, her face turned pale. "This is old," she said. "Much older than the house. It's connected to a group that operated here in the early 1900s, a cult or something like one. They believed certain homes were conduits, places where a being they called the Watcher could record people, mimic them, replace them." David tried to laugh it off, but the chill in his spine had nothing to do with the diner's broken air conditioning. That night, he nailed the attic shut. Clara begged him to leave, but he couldn't. Not yet. He needed to understand what he'd found. At 3:12 a.m., the attic hatch exploded open, splintering the wood. A freezing gust swept through the hallway, thick with the scent of damp earth and rot. David climbed the ladder with a kitchen knife and a flashlight, every step louder than it should have been. The attic was empty, except for the symbol, now freshly carved into the floor and pulsing with light. The air was dense, like he was underwater. A whisper filled the room. Not a voice, but static, shaping thoughts in his mind. It didn't speak words. It didn't need to. It wanted him to watch. David ran back down the ladder and woke Clara and Sophie. "We're leaving," he said, grabbing bags with shaking hands. But as they packed, the lights flickered, and the projector roared to life. The reel wasn't one he recognized. It showed them. David, Clara, and Sophie, tied up in the attic, eyes wide with terror. The burlap masked figure standing silently behind them. The footage looped, again and again. Different angles, different perspectives, as if it had already happened. David smashed the projector, but the images didn't stop. They bled from the walls, the windows, the ceiling. The house groaned. The floorboards cracked. And the static whisper turned into a roar. Sophie screamed. Clara collapsed to her knees, whispering over and over, "The Watcher sees! The Watcher sees!" David grabbed them both and ran for the door. It wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't shatter. The house had sealed them in. Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate, descending the attic ladder. David turned. The figure stood there. Its eyes were endless black, its presence suffocating. It didn't move, didn't speak, it just watched. The next morning, the Harper house stood silent. The door was open, swinging gently in the breeze. No one was inside. No sign of struggle. No sign of the Harpers. Just a film canister on the dining room table. Home Movies, 2025. No one in Willow Creek talks about the house on Maple Lane, but if you walk past it late at night, you might hear the soft hum of a projector and see flickering light in the attic window. Just don't stop to look, because once it sees you, you're part of the real.